garden at this plot. We're at Rootswork Community Garden right now. And they're going to give us some insight into kind of growing a kitchen garden. So really focused on growing edibles that we can use in our home kitchens, and dealing with pest problems and all the different, unique situations that come up throughout the gardening season, and how they've dealt with them here, and hopefully kind of troubleshooting anything that people have going on at their home gardens, and just getting a little tour of what's going on here. Celebrating what you do as well. It's really cool.
Yeah, just really briefly, what we do here is, this used to be a big plot that was farmed for a market owned by Jeremy and Sally. It's a little history. And then 3 years ago, they split it in half over here. We are farming all the food for the Warren Elementary School. And so all this goes down through the school, or the great majority of it, for the fall. What we'll talk about for this tour for some of the unique aspects of the garden.
To our parents. So I guess then I'll just hop into an introduction of sheet mulching. This soil is really good. You can kind of just see, even from what we just dug up in the past hour, it's really dark. It's nice. Every year that it's been farmed, there's been compost added to it, so it's been amended. But I thought it would be nice to maybe not till it, and because every year this plot has been tilled. So even though compost had been added, it had been tilled every year, and so we thought that maybe we should just try and experiment with a no-till version of agriculture, because last year the witchgrass and the crabgrass was an incredible problem, and I think a lot of it was because, tilling it in the spring, a lot of that seed head and everything just got mixed into the soil, and it was just a persistent problem. And so the whole point of sheet mulching, natural soil building activity, while being able to farm in it. So if you think about plants in their natural habitat and in the natural environment, they're very rarely, when you go out into the woods, you very rarely see bare soil. I think soil doesn't really like to be bare ever. And bare soil is the most efficient way I know of to actively erode and to deplete the nutrients of the soil. So we wanted to just cover as much as we could, and also adding organic material on top of the soil to let it break down, and again have it be natural soil building processes. So that involves introducing different nitrogen-rich materials and carbon-rich materials, and allowing those to decompose over the year while planting inside of it, so that the plants can benefit from a healthy soil, but also it will stave off very productive. So again, in that process, we're looking at nitrogen materials or nitrogen sources and carbon sources. Here, the food scraps and the compost serves as the nitrogen material, and then the straw is the carbon. And I just love digging under here because it just feels very alive. Another point of doing sheet mulching is the cardboard layer prevents the weeds, so that's the weed barrier. You can also use burlap, newspaper, anything like that. Another thing is that doing sheet mulching, you're just creating the ideal environment for earthworms, essentially, and other critters. And the idea is that they do the tilling for you while your plants are growing. So you can kind of just see, every time I whip this up, it's pretty compact right here because it's a path, but you can kind of see all these little holes and divots and things that these guys are just breaking it up, and never had to drive a tractor through here, so it's kind of nice.
Did you start this from seed?
Yep. Yeah, these are starting just living. It's a little bit more work up front, but in particular for a kitchen garden, where you want to be spending your time cooking with the vegetables, not actually dealing with growing them. When that time comes and they're producing, it's just everything's done for you.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. It's a self-watering and self-fertilizing system. It's also no-till.
Yeah. Good.
So it's kind of an experiment in the making. We talked with those guys who are doing the garden for the market, and they didn't till, they just forked. And Aaron did a really good job of getting a lot of the seeds out, but we're going to kind of see who has more weeds, I guess.
Exactly.
And if this is a viable solution, and if it's worth the work, then at least they can know in the future that you can do this.
Yeah. Carrots. So this is a carrot bed that the kids planted, and yeah, you can see a lot popping up here. Some kids did a better job making a line than others, but we'll fix that when the time comes.
They had fun that day. That's the most important thing.
That's all that matters. And it's, for me, that's in this garden the last 2 summers. That's been the biggest success. One, because you just get a huge yield. I think last year it was like 300 something pounds of carrots just from from a couple rows. Yeah.
Wow.
We did 2 plantings, so we have these that are coming up now, which will be ready in end of July, and then early August, and then then we planted another crop, and it was like maybe more normal sized carrots in like September. Is you do an initial thinning, so there's none like right next to each other.
You're talking about like this far apart?
Yeah, so like down here where they're all sort of like that, maybe just like picking in between, just like, letting there be a little bit between, let those grow up, and then you can take the thinnings once they're actually a reasonable size and use those as your baby carrots in the kitchen.
Yeah, so we have onions kind of scattered about, as you can see. Alliums themselves are really good pest deterrents, and so we are, there's one of the reasons why instead of, it's especially clear in the sheet mulch beds, but we got into companion planting and seeing how different plants planted together, one plant will deter certain pests that another plant has, and so we did that in and around, and that's the onions kind of through here. We have a row of carrot and then some onions. Like any legume, bush beans are a nitrogen fixer, so that's also true for peas and other legumes. They'll draw in nitrogen from deep within the soil, and it attaches to little bacteria on their roots. And cucumbers they're a plant that needs heavy fertilization and lots of nitrogen. So planting nitrogen fixers with those that require lots of nitrogen, and then bringing in beneficial pollinators and also pest deterrents into one little area. We're kind of hoping things that will work out. And they like to encourage people and pollinators.
Can I ask you a quick carrot question?
Yeah.
So if you guys had continued and been able to do your mulching everywhere, how would you have done your carrot planting?
That's one of those hard questions.
And that's kind of why we decided to have just a few rows that we would be direct sow rows. Yeah.
I think if we had.
So do you guys have any kind of cool preserving ideas for? I would imagine growing a school garden is really challenging because when everything's in harvest.
I think freezing is going to be a big one, especially for the kale.
And it's just a quick one too. And one of the cool things, a lot of things, the books that you'll read about freezing, it says blanch it first and then freeze it, and it's an extra step. If you know you're going to use it within a month or two, skip that step and throw it right in bags in the freezer. And that's what we did a lot of we had an entire row of basil last year that we just mowed down and stuck it in Ziplocs and brought it over to the school freezer and stuck it in the freezer. And then Claire, when she actually had time, went and pulled it out and just made tons of pesto with it. And one of the things you'll run into around here a lot is the powdery mildew, which everyone seems to get. And basically the leaves will turn this foggy white color, and then they'll just all die. There's a powder, neem powder, or neem oil, that's what it is, right?
I've also heard that for things like mold that will eat the leaves, especially of squash, adding, once the mold sets in, you can just top dress the plant with some compost tea and horse manure. And I guess that introduction of bacteria again takes care of the mold and will do it naturally. Well, I think there's also a lot to be said for just plant diversity in a garden, and when you have different things mixed up, pest or mildew is less likely to just attack it.
You can make plants do funny things. I don't know, I think that's about all we have.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming.